Members of the European Parliament have overwhelmingly backed the terms of the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union. After quite a prolonged speculations and political ripples, the UK is finally due to leave the bloc at 2300 GMT tomorrow. After the UK leaves, there will be an 11-month transition period in which the two sides hope to negotiate their future economic relationship. Good morning, I'm Abhyuday Shrestha, and these are the headlines of the hour. Prime Minister Oli backs disputed MCC, citing it is not a part of any military strategy. The ruling party to discuss on the upcoming General Convention at the second preliminary Central Committee meeting. Government's operating expenses increased in an unnatural manner in the past 5 years. Experts fear an untoward economic situation in the near future. Britain finally scheduled to leave the European Union after the European Parliament members overwhelmingly backed the terms of the departure. And Manchester City advances to the League Cup finals despite a 1-0 loss to Manchester United. Liverpool blanks West Ham 2-0 to stay on top of the English Premier League table with a 19-point lead. Let's begin with the national political updates. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has reiterated the American Assistance Millennium Challenge Corporation MCC should be endorsed from the Parliament at the earliest, citing it is not part of any military strategy. Speaking at the Central Committee meeting of the ruling Nepal Communist Party yesterday, Prime Minister Oli said that accepting the MCC grant would be beneficial for Nepal. In regards to protests from leaders of the ruling party itself, Premier Oli called any doubts regarding MCC was as unnecessary.
कुनै अर्को कुरासँग लिङ्क छैन। हामीले जुन सम्झौता गरेका छौँ त्यो सम्झौतासँग मात्रै यो सम्बन्धित यो 5 वर्षभित्र कार्यक्रम पुरा गरिसक्नुपर्छ र 5 वर्षभित्र पुरा गरिसकेर पुरा भएन भने रकम त्यहीँ फुरिसक्छ, सम्झौता पनि त्यहीँ टुङ्गिन्छ।
Premier Oli also expressed dissatisfaction towards the criticisms thrown at the government despite its efforts. Premier Oli also mentioned of the government's major achievements and claimed that the government would keep on working in the current pace.
यो सरकार गठन भएपछि प्रतिदिन करिब 5.7 किलोमिटरका दरले कालोपत्री सडक निर्माण भइरहेको छ। केही वर्ष अगाडि वर्षमा 10 किलोमिटर मात्रै, वर्षभरिमा 10 किलोमिटर सडक कालोपत्री त्यस्ता वर्षहरू के आउँछ।
Prime Minister Oli claimed that the border dispute with India would be solved at the earliest as necessary discussions were underway. The Prime Minister stated that the unification between the then CPN-UML and CPN Maoists took place after long discussion and thought process and urged the Nepal Communist Party leaders to actively participate in the discussions on the party's political report. Premier Oli admitted of new setbacks with the executive chairman of the party, Pushpakamal Dahal, but hinted that the party would move ahead by resolving the weaknesses. Nepal Communist Party's Central Committee meeting, which is the second since the unification began yesterday onwards at the capital's City Hall. Executive chairperson of the ruling party, Pushpakamal Dahal, presented the political report on behalf of both chairpersons. Likewise, General Secretary Vishnu Paurel presented the proposals for organizational and statute amendment during the meeting. Chairpersons of Province Committee also presented brief reports at the meeting. One of the agenda of the meeting is to endorse the decisions of the party's Standing Committee and Secretariat Committee. The ruling party is to form 15 subgroups today to discuss on the political report. The meeting will take place till the 2nd of February. The ruling Nepal Communist Party chairman duo, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and Executive Chairperson Pushpakamal Dahal expressed their commitment to move the party ahead by resolving weaknesses experienced so far. The ongoing meeting of the Central Committee is likely to prepare a future action plan for the party. The party is also holding discussions for a unified General Convention on April 2021, as suggested by the political report submitted yesterday. A few of the ruling party leaders have explained that the subtle expressions shared by Chairperson and Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli in his inaugural speech could be the leader showing a way out to avoid the criticisms from central member leaders against the party leadership. The party's political report has also mentioned that the General Convention of the party will be convened by April 2021 and the conventions at provincial and local levels would be concluded within 3 months, starting from mid-September. The meeting is likely to focus on the future plans of the party and defending the party against criticisms. Meanwhile, the issue of American Assistance Millennium Challenge Corporation has also been tabled at the meeting. Sri Panchami, also known as Basanta Panchami, is being observed today across the country by worshipping Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, wisdom, learning, art, music, and culture. The day is considered special for students and new learners. Students take early bath, observe the mass Saraswati Puja in schools, visit temples, and listen to Basanta Shravan. Many families also mark this day by sitting with young children, encouraging them to write their first words, while some just study or create music together. People from Hindu and Sikh communities, mainly in Nepal and eastern India, observe this festival. It is believed that the festival marks the beginning of the spring season. We'll take a short break here. We have more news coming up. Welcome back. The government's operating expenses have increased in an unnatural manner each year in the past 5 years. The government's operating expenses have increased by 23.2% compared to the GDP in the past 5 years, while the capital expenditure has merely increased by 4%. Analysts say if the trend continues against decreased sources for revenue, the government will no longer have budget for development works. We have a report.
Nepal government's expenses stood at 22.5% compared to the gross domestic product GDP in the Nepalese fiscal year 2068-69. 6 years since then, the operating expenses have increased by 13.5%. The government's spending on the salaries and facilities for public officials have crossed 23%. Meanwhile, during the same period, the capital expenditure could not even see an increase of 4% compared to the GDP. Analysts have termed the trend as unusual. The government has failed to meet its target revenue since last fiscal year. In general economic practice, experts suggest that the government should have cut down on additional staff expenses and increased development budget instead.
अप्रत्याशितै हो जुन ढङ्गले पछिल्लो अवधिमा तपाईको चालु खर्च बढिरहेको छ यसले चाहिँ नि धान्नै नसक्ने गरिकन बढ्छ भन्ने छ कतिपय त्यसभित्रका तमाम कारणहरू छन् हैन तपाईले यो संस्थानहरुमा जाने पैसा पनि तपाई ठीक ढङ्गले नियन्त्रण गर्ने र त्यसको सदुपयोग गर्ने पनि गर्नु भएको छैन अर्कोतिर जसरी प्रदेश र स्थानीय तहमा पठाइन्छ हैन वित्तीय हस्तान्तरण गरेर त्यसभित्र वास्तवमा कतिपय पुँजीगत खर्चहरू पनि छ त्यसलाई छुट्याएर गर्ने र अनि पुँजीगतसँग टाइट गरेर चालु खर्च कम गर भनेर चाहिँ प्रदेश र स्थानीय तहमा पनि जानु पर्थ्यो त्यतापट्टि पनि जसरी काम हुनु पर्थ्यो हुन गइरहेको छैन.
The operating expenses for fiscal year 2073-74 was 519 billion rupees, which increased to 854 billion rupees in 2075-76, which shows an increment of 63% in just 2 years. The capital expenditure struggling to see required changes indicates that investments in productive sectors has been declining as well, further affecting employment opportunities.
कुनै ठोस मापदण्ड बिना कुनै नियन्त्रणको एउटा चाहिँ यार्ड स्टिक बिना हैन मनपरी एउटा स्वच्छाचारी ढङ्गले माग गर्यो अनि त्यसको आधारमा अलिकति प्लस माइनस गरेर चाहिँ अनि दियो जुन किसिमको प्रवृत्ति छ यसलाई तुरुन्तै रोक्न पर्छ.
Nepal government barely collects 800 billion rupees in revenue. Most of it is spent in salaries and facilities for public officials. Analysts have stated the government's decision to allocate over 150 billion rupees to failing corporations, boards, development committees and councils has invited the current situation. There is a call for the government to cut down on useless expenses and increase investments in productive sectors to avoid any untoward economic situation in near future.
And it's time now for the international update. Members of the European Parliament, MEPs, have overwhelmingly backed the terms of the UK's departure from the EU. MEPs ratified the Brexit withdrawal agreement by 621 votes to 49 following an emotional debate in Brussels. Several British MEPs said they hoped the UK would return one day, although Eurosceptics, including the Brexit party's Nigel Farage, used their final speeches to tear into the EU. The UK is due to leave the bloc at 2300 GMT tomorrow. Ratification of the withdrawal agreement, agreed by the UK and EU in October, was not in doubt after it easily cleared its committee stage last week. After the UK leaves, there will be an 11-month transition period in which the two sides hope to negotiate for future economic relationship. Trade talks are expected to begin in earnest in early March. The European Parliament will also get a say in ratifying any future trade deal. The UK has insisted talks should not extend beyond 31st of December 2020, when a transition period, which will see the UK follow EU rules, comes to an end. We have more news coming up, but right now it's time for another short break. Welcome back. In our Public Voice segment, we had asked the locals of Arthai Pathar, why hasn't the commitment made by the government and ministers been fulfilled? Let's take a look at what they had to say.
Public Voice.
जनताको कुरा माथि नपुगेर हो माथिबाट ध्यान नदिएको
दुर्गम भएको कारणले पनि हुन सक्छ
बजेट विनियोजन यो आर्थिक वर्षबाट सुरु भएछ बजेट विनियोजन नभइकन काम सुरु हुँदैन अब प्रक्रियामा छ
एक त पहुँचको कारण अनि अर्को देशको स्थितिले पनि भर पर्छ
अब चाहिँ हाम्रो मन्त्री आउँदै हुनुहुन्छ हुन्छ कि भन्ने आशा लागिरहेछ
निजी जग्गा जमिनहरू छ त्यसको अधिग्रहण गर्न बाँकी होला मुआवजा दिन बाँकी होला मलाई थाहा भएसम्म र त्यसपछि चाहिँ टेन्डर गर्न बाँकी होला यिनै कारणले अलिकति चाहिँ समय लाग्यो
धेरै अगाडिदेखि कुरा उठे तापनि सबभन्दा यो यतिखेरसम्म नरहनु पर्ने हो पूर्व मन्त्रीको दुर्घटना भएको थिएन भने हामीलाई लाग्छ यतिखेर निर्माण कार्य सुरु हुन्थ्यो होला
And it's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
And here's the question. Why have banks failed to attract customers for loan? Your options are A, high interest rates, B, strict paperwork, and C, adverse business environment. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B, or C, and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. And it's time now for the sports news.
Sports news.
Manchester City advanced to the League Cup finals despite a 1-0 loss to Manchester United last night. City had taken a 3-1 lead in the first leg match of the semi-final played at United home ground Old Trafford. Meanwhile, City suffered a 1-0 defeat at City's home ground Etihad Stadium last night after Nemanja Matic scored the only goal of the match in the 35th minute. City's Raheem Sterling scored in the 42nd minute but was ruled offside by the referee. Matic was shown the red card in the 76th minute after receiving his second yellow card. Manchester United held on to the win to win the match 1-0, but Manchester City advanced to the final with an aggregate 3-2 win. City will now face Aston Villa in the finals. Liverpool blanked West Ham 2-0 last night to go 19 points clear at the top of the English Premier League. In the match played at West Ham's home ground last night, Liverpool were awarded a penalty kick after Issa Diop fouled Divock Origi inside the D-box. Mohamed Salah converted the spot kick in the 35th minute to give Liverpool a 1-0 lead. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain scored in the 52nd minute to seal Liverpool's 2-0 win over West Ham. And now, before wrapping up, here's a look at the top stories once again. Prime Minister Oli backs disputed MCC, citing it is not a part of any military strategy. The ruling party to discuss on the upcoming General Convention at the second plenary Central Committee meeting. Government's operating expenses increased in an unnatural manner in the past 5 years. Experts fear untoward economic situation in the near future. Britain finally scheduled to leave the European Union after the European Parliament members overwhelmingly backed the terms of the departure. And Manchester City advances to the League Cup finals despite a 1-0 loss to Manchester United. Liverpool blanks West Ham 2-0 to stay on the top of the English Premier League table. And that's all for the moment. Keep watching Kantipur Television HD for more news and entertainment. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.